Hi there, I'm Peter Russell from Supertax. Welcome to another one of my video blogs. Today we're discussing the moving expense deduction here in Canada, a brief and general understanding. So what is the moving expense deduction? Well, let's just say you've decided to change your job, start a new job, or you've decided to start your own business, or you've decided to become a full-time student at a university. You may be able to deduct moving expenses. Now, the moving expense deduction can be found on line 219 of your T1 General Canadian Income Tax Return. Specifically, it is a deduction from net income to determine taxable income. Now, what type of expenses are generally deductible as moving expenses? Well, the first obvious one would be the cost of transportation and storage of your household contents. Everyone generally incurs that sort of expense when they move. So that's the first obvious one. Now let's just say you've had to incur some temporary accommodation, have had to incur temporary accommodation around either your old home or your new home. Well, then you would be eligible to deduct up to 15 days of that temporary accommodation. And along with that, any meals you also incurred for those 15 days. You can also deduct the cost of actually moving your family from your old home to your new home, such as the travel involved, the automobile, and meals involved. Now, when you sell a home, you incur commissions, legals, and sometimes advertising. Those costs relating to your old home would also be deductible as a moving expense. Now, you've incurred legals with the purchase of your new house. That also would be considered eligible moving expenses. Now, instead, let's just say you had an apartment and you're moving to a home. Well, if you've had to break a lease to move out of that apartment, then that cost would also be eligible as a moving expense. And just to revisit owning a home and moving to a new home, let's just say you were not able to sell your old home when you made your move, and you had to carry that home for a little while after your move when you moved into your new home. Well, then you can deduct up to $5,000 of maintaining costs, such as the costs of paying your hydro, paying your gas, your water expense. Maybe you paid maintenance fees. Up to $5,000 of maintaining your old home is also eligible as moving expense deduction. Now, there are some costs which are not allowable as a moving expense deduction. The first one would be any loss on the sale of your old home. Let's just say, for example, your home had an adjusted cost base of $300,000 and you only sold it for $280,000. That's a loss of $20,000. That is not eligible as a moving expense. Any costs made to help improve your old home, such as staging, that is also not allowed as a moving expense. Any costs relating to a house hunting trip for your new home, that is not an eligible moving expense. Now, any job hunting trip for your new job, that is also not an eligible moving expense. Any upkeep of your rented apartment, such as maybe having to paint the apartment or say fix some doors, that sort of thing is not eligible as a moving expense. Say the cost of forwarding your mail from your old home to your new home, that is not an eligible moving expense. Now, there is a major condition that must be met in order to deduct moving expenses. It is that you must move at least 40 kilometers closer to your new area of work from your old residence to your new home. And if this doesn't make sense, I'm going to show you on an example which I have on my board. So if you just follow me. Now, if you don't recognize this area, this is an area of southern Ontario, the Toronto-Hamilton area. I live in Mississauga, central Mississauga. My home is H1. I currently work about 5 kilometers from my office. So let's just say I decided to pack up and start a new job in Hamilton. Hamilton is about 60 kilometers from Mississauga. I decided to purchase a new home in downtown Hamilton, roughly about 5 kilometers away from my new job in Hamilton. Well, I will have moved 60 kilometers. That is more than 40 kilometers. I'm 40 kilometers closer to my new job from my old home. I am eligible to deduct my moving expenses. Now let's just say I didn't want to start my new job let's just say I didn't want to start work. I didn't want to take a job in Hamilton. Say I want to take a job in downtown Toronto. Downtown Toronto is 25 kilometers from my home in Mississauga. Say I decided to move to a condo on that lakeshore, one of the brand new condos that have gone up in the last year or so. Well, because we're under 25 kilometers, I definitely cannot deduct any of those moving expenses that I would incur in that case. I hope you found that understandable. Now, there's one more limitation I must mention. Your moving expenses are limited in the year that you paid them to the income that you earned from your new employment or your new business. So let's just say I moved at the start of October 2011. Say after October 2011, I incurred $20,000 of moving expenses, and say my income from my new job, my new employment, was only $15,000. In that case, my moving expenses were larger than my employment income from my new position. In that case, I could only deduct up to $15,000 of moving expenses. That doesn't mean that the moving expenses drops off the table. Those moving expenses could be deferred and carried forward to the next calendar year. So then, the remainder of those moving expenses, the $5,000, would be deductible against next year's new employment income. Well, I hope you found this seminar informative. If you have any questions, please feel free to send me an email at peter@Supertax.ca, or you can leave a comment below. Thank you very much. Have a great day.